They are down bad in Las Vegas, and it is time to free Davante Adams again. We got all of that and much more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, football fans, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering all the biggest stories from around the National Football League here, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We thank you very much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. And of course, it is Tuesday. It is trade deadline day, so it's time to get some speculation going, and we're going to do so with Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, myself, Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media, your NFL experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Head over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Luke, on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at our Yike and our Like, as always, including one of the big moves from today. We're going to be looking at, or one of the big moves from yesterday. We're going to take a look at some of the big moves that could go down today. We're going to kick everything off with a look at the Monday Night Football game and how that could potentially lead to one of those big moves. The Las Vegas Raiders look down bad, man, and Davante Adams on the sideline slamming his helmet down after being missed wide open by Jimmy Garoppolo, as he is apt to do. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Man. What's happening?
Okay, for one, you got to catch that one if you're going to slam your helmet, Davante.
Come on now. You got to get under it. You got to.
It's like a slant. Could have been a third down conversion. You dropped it. Got to catch that. Got to say that. But also, this sure sucks for him, doesn't it? He wanted out of Green Bay. Obviously, there's a lot going on there. He wanted to go, play in. For I think he grew up rooting for the Raiders, right? And,
because he grew up in, or he was like Fresno, like Central Valley area.
Play with Derek Carr. You get one season of that, and then he gets ousted. And now you're stuck with, instead of Guyliner Kirk, you're stuck with Hot Kirk.
Yeah,
who's much worse of a Kirk.
Much worse of a Kirk.
And it's frustrating, man. I mean, look, there is something so demoralizing about the way that the Lions just manhandled the Raiders. Do not look at that scoreboard and assume that it was a normal, just kind of like vaguely comfortable win. That was an absolute beatdown. Watching if you're Davante Adams and you're watching your defense get absolutely crushed like that on the ground, and that's what the Lions did. And then having to go on the field and then you get wide open and you get overthrown twice, could have been 2 long touchdowns. Oof.
Yeah.
I feel for him.
Tough. Targeted 7 times in this game, had 1 catch for 11 yards. Luke, the leading receiver in terms of receptions in this game, 3 players tied. Josh Jacobs, Austin Hooper, and Hunter Renfrow, leading receivers in terms of receptions. 2 receptions 3 each.
Two. Oh my God.
A whole pair. It did not go well for the Las Vegas Raiders. And it didn't go well on the offensive side. It didn't go well on the defensive side. And so now you've got guys like Max Crosby. You've got a guy like Davante Adams, which, by the way, we talked about Max Crosby here on the show before and how he deserves to be in those like top of the league, like defensive end conversations. I think he proved that yet again on Monday night. I thought he was spectacular. But then you've got Davante Adams, Hunter Renfro's in this mix. The trade deadline is at 4 p.m. Eastern time today. Is there an opportunity to rescue one of these guys and kind of get them off of, no pun intended, but the Raiders sinking ship here? I mean, they've got to do something with these guys because it ain't happening in Las Vegas right now. And I feel bad for our boy, your boy Q, over at Locked On Raiders, who's got to break this down and try to keep hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There are certain, can we just do it? Can we just pour one out?
Yeah.
Can we just rip them?
Yep. It's that time.
It's that time. Let's We have already, so on Tuesday here on the Locked On NFL podcast, we have a tradition of trying to do as many as we can before Halloween. And as we record this, we made it.
Yeah.
At least in my time zone.
Yes. Yeah. Same here. We're still ahead.
Okay.
As we record.
And of just declare, like, we know it's over. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Raiders fans, you can't, that's not a team that makes it very far. That team is pretty dreadfully bad. We've already ripped a lot of the obvious teams like the Panthers and the Patriots and the Bears and the Cardinals that, kind of didn't really enter this season with a lot of high expectations, but the Raiders kind of did. And it's rough to see what has come out. I think like the Raiders and the Giants are two teams that kind of came into this season thinking, here we go. This is our build. We're going to make a run at this thing. And it just never got off the launch pad.
Yeah. It's been rough. And the thing of, and like the going to Jimmy Garoppolo thing to me was bad news in the very beginning. I cover the New Orleans Saints here on the network as well. And if it wasn't going to be Derek Carr, what we were told during the combine, or what we were hearing whispers of during the combine, is that if the Saints didn't get Derek Carr, they were going to go after Jimmy Garoppolo. And I am so glad that did not happen, because like this offense has struggled with Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. This offense would have never found a way to get off the ground with Jimmy Garoppolo. No shot at all. And so I'm just grateful that happened. Yeah, I do want to say one positive thing from this game. Sorry, Raiders fans, it's not going to be about the Raiders. I apologize, but
it's good. You're going to be sad, and that's life. Welcome to football.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, I will say this: Josh Jacobs, like, fantastic. I mean, still phenomenal. But like, you already knew that, right? Like you knew that, and so for me, this is all about me. I'm confirming priors right now because Sam Laporta was outstanding and Jahmyr Gibbs was outstanding. Now, did I think Jahmyr Gibbs was a first-round pick? No. But that you're after a running back where they drafted him, that made sense? No. But he was outstanding tonight. And he is, I can confidently say, because I've watched the NFL try to find this type of player since 2017 when the New Orleans Saints drafted Alvin Kamara. Everyone has tried to find an Alvin Kamara. Jahmyr Gibbs is the closest that I have seen in that one game. The first ever Detroit Lion, by the way, to have more than 100 rushing yards, more than 25 receiving yards, and a touchdown in a single game in a rookie season. Detroit, old franchise, first ever to get it done. I thought he was excellent. Phenomenal.
And now correct me if I'm wrong here. Most of it was just gashing him on zone and duo. Didn't have to do anything fancy. You didn't have to invent a new position. You don't have to run, sluggos out of the slot with him. Just hand it off to the dude like Alabama did. It's easy peasy. You still didn't have to lie to us. But I'm glad that they're figuring that out. That's who the Lions wanted to be. Yeah. That team that just, we're going to run it on you 10 times in a row and score. And if you don't get your weight up, we're just going to steamroll you. And that's what it felt like watching just a big, strong group of dudes steamroll a less big, strong group of dudes. And you could just see how demoralizing that was. So I guess the next thing we have to get into, will Davante Adams get traded? As you are listening to this, you're probably listening to this before the trade deadline or shortly after it. So let's try to figure out what's going to happen here and other guys that maybe should be freed.
Yes, time to save some players. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash is an unbelievably clutch thing for me, especially during the busy season of the actual active NFL season, at least for me. But if you're sitting on the couch and you're watching a game and you got to get some grub, I mean, you're not going to turn off the TV and go out to eat, right? You're certainly not going to cook. There's a game on. So get some DoorDash delivered right to your door. And for me, at least, it has been a really great way to find some of those local hole-in-the-wall joints that I would have never even picked out otherwise. There's a burrito taco place next to me that has become kind of a go-to for me now that I was able to discover it on DoorDash. So find what is local for you. And hey, let me know about it. I love hearing about that kind of thing. You can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. That's LOCKED23. You get half off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Subject to change. Terms apply.
All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. Will Davante Adams get traded? And who are some of the other players that we would look to save as the trade deadline nears? That's what we got coming up for you here on Locked On NFL. And of course, our Yike and our Like coming up here in just a moment. Appreciate you, as always, making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, every day. So, Luke, let's start off with Davante Adams. Do you think that Davante Adams gets traded by the trade deadline?
Well, Adam Schefter already kind of answered this one on Monday Night Football. He said the Raiders aren't doing anything.
They don't like to be doing thing.
No, they do not. It's a frustrating moment for the Raiders, but I don't think it's one like to start selling off at the trade deadline. You have to understand that you're sending a message to the whole locker room that we're packing it in. That people in your own building don't think that you're going to be able to turn this ship around. And in some look, if you're 1-7, that's not that controversial of a message to send, right?
Right.
And you've probably got a lot of people looking toward next year. You probably got a lot of people that aren't even going to be here next year, when that culture impact matters. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a little tougher if you still feel even remotely like you could go on a run, win 3-4 games in a row and pull yourself back into the standings. So I get it. Even though I think the Raiders have built something that is just destined to be like the 16th best team in the league, and like top out there. Yep. They don't agree with me, so I get it. Go for it. But I don't think they do anything.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. I think maybe I don't want to say low level, but maybe a lower level trade like a Hunter Renfrow or something like that could potentially make sense. But I don't think you're going to see big names on the move. Now, you mentioned, being a 1-7 team early on and the opportunity then to where maybe the message isn't so controversial to send. That's got me thinking about the Carolina Panthers and the potential pieces they can move. Now they're not 1-7; they're 1-6. But still, like your framework works. Right?
I mean, they were the last winless team. Like they're clearly the team looking at a top pick, and they don't have that pick, which is also part of this.
Right, and you have one of the most premium positions that you could potentially move a player on at edge rusher. Every defense in the NFL can use an edge rusher. You've got a Brian Burns. That's a spot to where I would, if I got the right offer, but if I can get at least one first round pick, I think I might do that if I'm the Carolina Panthers because, look, I want to build around and protect my young quarterback. I want to give him opportunities to build. So getting some of that draft capital back that I sent to get Bryce Young in the first place, because remember they had to trade with the Bears to get up to that number 1 overall pick, so I can continue to build. I would get that. Like I would understand a Brian Burns move in terms of the potential future assets that it could bring for them to continue to build around their young quarterback.
Yeah, the wrench in it is a team would have to pay all that and then also probably extend him.
I think that's okay for that position. Yeah,
teams do that, but you got to understand that might put a damper on the actual draft capital that you get.
It might be more like a equivalent to a first round pick in value. Yeah, you know what I mean?
A second and a fourth, that kind of thing.
Exactly,
and it won't feel good for the Panthers, but that's kind of the poverty franchise tax. When you are in the pits as a franchise where Carolina is, this is a bad moment for Carolina. Yeah. They've got their quarterback and they're hoping he can develop, but they're very clearly in a rebuild. And the idea of paying Brian Burns a whole bunch of money to play in a whole bunch of years where they're probably going to be rebuilding years is not something the Panthers want to do. I don't necessarily agree with them there, but okay. You kind of have to trade your best players away for draft picks and then hope you get as good of a player. And like, you have to sort of absorb that risk.
Yeah.
Which sucks. And that's sort of part of the value proposition of when you're bad, it's hard to climb out of that because anybody you get that's good, if you're going to go right back into rebuilding, you have to flip Brian Burns and hope you don't draft a worse edge rusher.
What's a name of a player that you might try to save from a sinking ship before the end of the trade deadline? Like if you could move somebody from a losing team to a winning team right now, who would you do that with?
Ryan Tannehill. And the
that's
Titans,
such a good one.
The Titans might be figuring something out here. If Will Levis, he just put up 4 touchdowns, right? What if he's just like the dude? But if he's the dude, Ryan Tannehill is not, and now that's not a great situation for him. He is somebody that, so for my Vikings, who are currently in the QB buyers market, maybe Adam Schefter said no on Monday Night Football, but everybody's talking about it. Ryan Tannehill is probably like the second most popular name that has come up after Kyler Murray. For like, what if we just got this guy in and we had a dude that could actually, be a starting quality quarterback? There's a lot of teams out there that could use that with an injured starter. Yeah. It's something I've like, as much as the Jets have had a lot of time to do this, like, but things are different in Tennessee than they were last Thursday,
Right.
Because now they had this big thing off of Will Levis. Maybe they want to roll with that.
Yeah.
And there are other QB injuries that have been sustained. So like, I don't know. It feels like Ryan Tannehill could swoop in and just be that kind of Band-Aid that gets you through if your QB is injured. And it can take him out of a situation where the Titans have now made a reasonably serious effort to replace Ryan Tannehill in 2 drafts running now. Like that relationship is not long for this world.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if he's going to be the Netflix quarterback guy this year of the aging.
He might go the Andy Dalton route, where he just like journeyman bridges for like 17 teams, and that becomes who he is now.
Yeah, sorry, turned my stomach upside down talking about Andy Dalton. I think if I were to probably like save somebody from a sinking ship right now, I might go. No offense, but I look at like Danielle Hunter from Minnesota. Is
Everybody
it fair
wants
to say
a piece?
Minnesota's a sinking ship? But to be clear, I wouldn't. If I'm the Saints, I wouldn't trade for him. Right? Like it's not me wanting it for my team. I'm just thinking about like what makes sense in terms of pulling somebody from what looks like it's about to be a bad situation and then trying to get them to a better situation.
I think it's the same thing as Brian Burns, where you got to extend him, right? The Vikings are not going to let him go for anything less than a first round and change.
Okay.
So if you're doing that, you're not doing that for an 8-game rental, right? You're doing that to extend him as well, which makes it a difficult resource thing. And I don't think it was fair to say that
thinks you're a Danielle Hunter away this year too, and have to extend him.
And look, he just celebrated his 29th birthday, right? Like this dude is not ancient by any, he's just still very much in his prime, be a veteran presence. Like he'd be huge for that kind of team. The Vikings have not looked at this season at any point and blinked and said, wait, what if we aren't a Super Bowl team? No, they have just kind of attacked the 5 feet in front of them all year. With Kirk Cousins out, I think that circumstance changes. I think that gets a little bit more fair to say. I think before that, it was just a lot of people whinging about a team being, 0-3. And ultimately, that's just an overreaction to the first few games that got kind of proven wrong as they won 4 of the next 5.
Yep.
So I don't see the Vikings doing. Adam Schefter said he doesn't see the Vikings doing anything like that. So I think people can put their pipe dreams away unless you want to come out serious and, give us a first and a third and help us go get our quarterback. Yeah, then we'll do it.
Sure. Yeah. Like everything, there's always a price. But you should be happy that I said Danielle Hunter and I did not mention Jettas because I don't think he's going anywhere. I'm not that crazy. I'm not that crazy. No. I saw somebody scrum up this idea of Justin Jefferson being traded from the Vikings to the Buffalo Bills, and I was like, we've seen this before. We've seen this movie already. Like, they
do need a wide receiver. Like,
the Buffalo Bills do, but there's no chance that Minnesota is like, oh yeah, we're gonna send him to Buffalo. That'll be great.
He has the Vikings bent over a barrel next offseason. He knows it.
Oh yeah, he's getting mad. bag. He's going to get the
yeah.
bag. All right, coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at our yike and our like, including some of the early trade deadline events of Monday. Got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. And if you're thinking about getting into sports betting, now is a pretty good time to do it, because if you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and you make any $5 moneyline bet and win, you get $150 in bonus bets. So that's like taking any money line bet. It can be the easiest money line on the whole schedule. It can be Chiefs versus the worst team. And if you win that money line bet, you get 30-1 odds, $5 into 150 in bonus bets. That is the promo going on at FanDuel.com. And it's more than just money line bets. There's, of course, spreads, all kinds of player props. You can smash them together into crazy parlays, which I know everybody loves to do, and all kinds of other stuff. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon or use the FanDuel app, which is great to use, and they pay out instantly when you win. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Win a $5 money line bet and get $150 back in bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, y'all, wrapping up this episode of Locked On NFL with our yike and our like of the week. And Luke, why don't you kick us off with your like this week? Start on some positive.
Well, we got some news from the day that we probably some trade deadline news we haven't even talked about yet, which is Leonard Williams to the Seahawks for a 2nd and a 5th. The Giants are doing this because they don't really need him. They got this Dexter Lawrence thing working out, and they actually get more back in draft capital than they originally paid for him when they got him from the Jets. So congratulations, Giants. That's fine. But the real like here is for the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle has been like the thing that has held Seattle back the most this year has been the interior defensive line and needing a penetrating game wrecker right there. It's such a perfect place for Leonard Williams to go. And it just adds exactly the dimension that feels like it's going to make that defense really get up and sing. The Seahawks secondary has been fun for a couple of years. It's fun and it's young, and they have a couple of edge rushers that are coming into their own, like Boye Mafe. Getting that interior game wrecking piece to play in front of the linebackers that they have. Like, the more I think about that Seahawks defensive roster and the way that they go about their business, the more stoked I get on that. And I don't know, I feel like that's about the most you could turn that 2nd round pick into, even after understanding that they got to extend Leonard Williams and they have to spend money on him as well.
Yeah.
A 2nd round pick and some money, I think, is absolutely worth it for the impact he's going to have on that defense. Yep.
That's a NFC West leading Seattle Seahawks team as well. By the way, thanks to
49ers spiral.
Yep. Thanks to Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals. I love it, man. I love a good 3 tech that can come in and help out, and that can also bounce outside, play a little bit on the edge. Like, guy can do a little bit of everything. I also love that both of the trades that we saw that are like going to be considered trade deadline trades, aside from the Kevin Byard trade from last week, are both defensive tackles, right? We saw Leonard Williams head to Seattle. We saw Kentavious Street reunite with Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator over in Atlanta. That was the other trade for the day with the late round pick swaps, which who cares? The late round pick swaps always kill me because there are people who get really super into the late round pick swaps and like, oh, well, they got this value and blah, blah. When we know like dang right well that by the time that those picks actually end up being made, they'll have been traded like 6 or 7 more times, and it doesn't matter. But those always trip me out.
I've got quick, before we get to your like, I've got a quick breaking report from Jeremy Fowler at ESPN. Bears corner Jaylon Johnson has requested a trade. Chicago granted permission to search for a new home before the trade deadline. The player and team negotiated a new contract last week, but couldn't come close to a deal. So he is available. Your team can get Jaylon Johnson.
Man, I feel like, I know Adam Schefter said that the Raiders weren't going to do anything, but my goodness, if there's a
Please
team,
have a serious defense, Raiders, for the first time since like 1974.
Boy, I would love to see a secondary with Jaylon Johnson, Marcus Peters, and Amik Robertson. I would love that. Ooh, I know Adam said they weren't going to do it, but I hope they do it. That's really great. That's excellent. And just to give flowers where flowers are due, when we were prepping for the show, before the show, one of the guys that Luke mentioned was Jaylon Johnson. Potentially.
Yeah, there had been a lot of rumblings that he was going to want, that there was something not going right there. So.
I'm just saying, I didn't hear any rumblings till I heard you rumble. So congratulations, brother. You get your flowers. And these are good flowers too, not the Walmart flowers. For me, my like for this week is that the New York Jets and the New York Giants punted 24 times in a game. Listen, I know that sounds like
that game. I keep just seeing stats from it. I didn't see a single play from it. I keep just seeing stuff from it. It makes no sense.
The thing that's so wild to me is that, okay, so I just watched the Saints in Indianapolis put up 511 offensive yards, right? Which was outstanding for them. They haven't done that in a long time, blah, blah, blah. 511 offensive yards. Thomas Morstead punted for more yards than the Saints had total offense still in that game. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And then the fact that game not only ended 10-13, not only ended with a field goal to win the game, but was being replayed on NFL Network during Monday Night Football Monday night. Chef's kiss.
Fantastic.
Incredible. So good. That to me, my favorite noodle is bucatini. That's the bucatini of the NFL season for me so far. Easily. Wow. Done. Absolutely love it.
All right. I got to get a quick yike in.
Yep,
because the 670 The Score, which is a Chicago area radio station, comes down on Chicago Bears management and essentially accuses the Bears of having a backstabbing whisper campaign designed to undermine the organization's faith in Justin Fields, because a lot of them would rather coach Tyson Bagent. That is the vibe that I got from that. So things are going great in Chicago. Yike. The rebuild is falling apart before it even got off the ground, man.
Yike indeed. Hey, I'm going to stick in the NFC North for a yike. One that I know you're going to like. I saved this just for you. My yike is that it's time to pour one out for the Green Bay Packers, man.
Oh, I would love to. Boy, watching that tape, that team is bad. Oh, my God.
So, yike to the Green Bay Packers. Yike to not being able to catch footballs, which is kind of the point. And like for you, Luke, because we get to pour one out for the Green Bay Packers at 2-5 before Halloween.
Absolutely. Love it. Would take this every year.
Got to love it. Let's see. We'll do it again next year. All right, y'all. Because it ain't going to get any better anytime soon, I don't think.
Oh, it probably has to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. We appreciate you very much for being here for another episode of Locked On NFL, making us your first listen of the day every day. Make sure that you're coming back through Chris and James with the biggest questions around the NFL, getting you all covered on Wednesday's episode. And Luke and I will see you next Tuesday. Thank you so much for being here with us. For Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter, I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media. We will see you here soon for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.